DC Rise of the Power Company #1 is a one-shot comprised of 4 short stories from Black creative teams. It features several fan favorite and recently created Black DC characters. Although it's a mixed bag, I'm excited to start my Black History Month reviews with this issue. It takes place after DC's last event, Absolute Power, in which government operative Amanda Waller launched an attack to steal heroes and metahumans' powers and frame them for committing crimes in the media via AI. After the event, the heroes defeated Waller, retrieved their powers, albeit some individuals swapped abilities. Many ordinary people also received powers and became metahumans overnight. Writer Brandon Thomas and artist Charles Stewart III collaborated on the first story of the book. It revolves around Josiah Power, the former owner of a firm called the Power Company that hired heroes to fight crime. It offers the interesting perspective of Power, who is an advocate for superheroes amid strong anti-metahuman sentiment amongst the public because of Waller's schemes. Power is a metahuman with the ability to absorb ambient energy from his surroundings and channel it into power. However, since Absolute Power, he has been harboring the secret that he's lost control of his abilities, rendering him prone to uncontrollably unleashing the energy in an explosion at any moment. One hiccup could place him as a prime example of Waller's propaganda. Power visited several podcasts and television shows to be interviewed about recent events and discuss anti-metahuman prejudice. During these appearances, people expressed condolences for Power's nephew, Daniel Power's death. Daniel was a metahuman with the same abilities as his uncle. Waller's forces murdered him when he fought to retrieve his stolen powers. After his media appearances, Power visited Daniel's grave and talked to him from the afternoon to evening, expressing his guilt for his nephew's death. Finally, his assistant dragged a sorrowful Power from the grave. I think this issue hurts from the lack of a flashback to Daniel. It's hard to care about Power's motivations because his nephew, who is at the center of them, didn't make an appearance. I would have liked to see how this kid's powerful personality motivated a man to transition from seeing metahumans as profit to being a metahuman activist. Next, Power visits John Henry Irons, aka Steel, at Steelworks, a lab Irons owns. Power uses boom tubes, portals used for instant transportation, provided by Irons to unleash the pent-up ambient energy he stores on Deimos, one of the moons of Mars. This was his 68th visit. Once he landed, Power contacted Archie Waller, aka Deadeye, a former agent of Amanda Waller's, and her nephew to help gather intel on new candidates for the formation of the new Power Company. Power hired Archie to find candidates for his new Power Company team. He suggested Jefferson Pierce, aka Black Lightning, to be the leader. Archie discreetly used his telepathic abilities to vet Pierce for the role of leader. He concluded that Pierce's honesty, passion for helping his community, and absence of negative thinking made him a great candidate. After Archie educated Power on Pierce's background, that he was from a crime-ridden metropolis neighborhood called Suicide Slums, that he's a teacher, a member of the Justice League, and a single father of 2 metahuman girls, one of which, Anissa, is having problems, he and Pierce had a meeting. After pleasantries and small talk, Pierce abruptly asked Power if he was ready to talk about the reformation of the Power Company and jokingly admitted to knowing that Archie had been telepathically spying on him. Apparently, Justice League members have access to a contrived mechanism in which they can sense when a telepath is intruding on their thoughts. They also have access to a database of telepathic profiles to determine who the intruder is. Embarrassed, Power revealed he needed reassurance regarding the candidate selected to lead his new Power Company team. Pierce unoffended declined while offering appraisal to Power for his altruistic ambitions of creating a new superhero team that will protect people and combat the narrative that metahumans are dangerous. Pierce had too much on his plate: his family, the League, and an ongoing dispute with Councilman Harrison in his neighborhood. Understanding but frustrated at Waller's corruption of the public, Power went on a rant about how he'd ensured the new version of the Power Company would combat prejudices and paramilitary groups such as the Sons of Liberty, sound familiar, that have arisen in her wake. As his emotion built, an aura enveloped him, signaling that he was about to erupt. Suddenly, a boom tube sent by Steel appeared in front of Power so he could dispense the energy on Deimos again. Walking into the boom tube, Power tells Pierce that his new company will protect the image of the metahuman community, although their enemies can use Power's inability to control his powers as a chief example of how metahumans are dangerous. Finally, we're told the Power Company's story will continue in Black Lightning's book. I wanted more out of this story. It did its job as far as making me want to read Black Lightning's new book, but I didn't care for any of the other characters involved. I found it hard to connect or care about Josiah Power. Again, I think the absence of his nephew hurt this story. The art wasn't bad, but it also wasn't great either. I also would have enjoyed an overt acknowledgement of how metahuman discrimination is like racial prejudice. The connection is there for the reader to notice if they want to see it, but the characters never tap into it. I give this part a 6.5 out of 10. The next story is narratively strong, but the rough art takes away from it. It's a story written by Zipporah Smith and drawn by Kelsey Ramsey about Teth Adam, aka Black Adam's descendant, a medical student named Malik White. Malik debuted in 2022's Black Adam series, where Teth chose Malik as his successor and transferred his powers to him via a signet ring. During Absolute Power, Malik's ring became inoperative, making it impossible for him to use his abilities. Despite the ring not working and his revulsion of his ancestor Teth, the original Black Adam, Malik found it hard to resist wearing it every day. He couldn't erase the yearning to have his powers again. Upon arriving to work at a Washington, D.C. hospital, Malik's co-worker informed him cases of recently created metahumans, people who suddenly received powers, swamped the hospital. He also mentioned that a paramilitary human supremacist group called Humanity First, DC's version of MAGA and or the Proud Boys, were targeting metahumans. The chance of being hurt by people with unwieldy powers, or HF, led many of their co-workers to call out, making them understaffed. As they were talking, an injured Martin McCabe, aka Vixen, abruptly emerged from a portal and addressed Malik, alerting him that Dr. Mist, a fellow Justice League member, had teleported her there to hold off an incoming attack of Humanity First until more Justice Leaguers became available after dealing with an incident in the Amazon rainforest. Clutching her side, Vixen collapsed. As Malik helped her, she explained Humanity First assaulted her at another hospital. Next, Smith inserts a smart way to display Vixen's powers. After asking her not to be offended, Malik asked Mari why her skin was stretchy. She explained she used the ability of the spiny mouse to slide off damaged skin so that it could regenerate quickly. For those unaware, Vixen's abilities are that she can replicate the abilities of any animal. Malik, questionably flirting, asked what her skin cells would look like if he examined them. Rebuffing his creepy-ass question, Vixen flippantly addressed Malik as Bolt, his superhero persona, and requested that he stayed focused. Malik, embarrassed, clarified that his name was not Bolt, but Malik, as the Amazos during Absolute Power stole his abilities. Vixen explained that since the Time Commander reversed the power stealing of the Amazos, that process should have restored his powers, and advised him to try transforming into Bolt again. Malik, taking her advice, repeated Shazam, the word that transforms him into Bolt, to no avail. Malik suggested losing his powers may be a positive since he got them from Black Adam, who embodied Waller's concerns regarding metahumans. Vixen retorted she understood Malik's perspective. Generations passed down her family's Tantu totem, which granted her powers but caused her parents' death. She argued that running from her abilities, however, didn't remove her calling to help people. Just then, HF soldiers broke through the wall and announced they only wanted metahumans and that they would not harm any humans. After Malik and Vixen got cover, he noticed his ring mysteriously disappeared. Vixen, outnumbered, began channeling the powers of an elephant and told Malik to go as she charged into HF forces. Unexpectedly, Malik was floating in a foreign realm. A voice told him he was in a liminal space, a realm that exists in everyone between what we believe to be true and reality's truth. Belit, the goddess of destiny, a member of the Akkad, a group of gods born of Black Adam's malice, revealed herself to be the owner of the voice. She informed Malik that like the nth metal in his ring, the Akkad have changed and shifted their goals away from the malevolence they were born to spur. They altered Malik's connection to them so he could access his powers without his ring. All he needs to do is stop running from them. Belit also admitted that the scenario he saw of Vixen charging into battle alone was simply a possibility of what would happen had he not embraced his powers to help her. She then snapped him back to reality. Belit immediately shouted Shazam after reaching the real world, transformed into Bolt, and took out the HF soldiers. The story ends 3 hours later when Malik patched up a soldier he beat. After joking about collecting Vixen's skin sample again, He agreed with her that his questioning of whether he deserved his powers might make him more worthy of them than Black Adam, as Teth believed the gods owed him his powers. Again, story-wise, I enjoyed this issue. I'm interested in reading Christopher Priest's Black Adam. Malik White seems like an interesting character, plus he's from my area, the DMV, so I gotta support one of my own. What prevents this story from being great is the art. It looks rushed and stiff. Kelsey Ramsey has great art on her Instagram, so I'm not sure what happened here. Maybe she was trying to reach her deadline, I'm not sure. I give this story a 7 out of 10. The next story, written by John Jennings and illustrated by Kenan White and Adigun Ilan, centers Green Lantern Joe Moulin and Victor Stone, aka Cyborg. Every time I see Joe pop up, it makes me pissed that she doesn't have her own ongoing book. The story begins with Victor giving Joe, a relatively new hero, the tour of the Justice League Watchtower, a satellite that orbits Earth. Suddenly, Joe becomes distracted by the sight of Earth beyond a window and expresses guilt about not visiting her family since she got her power ring, despite coming to Earth a few times after joining the Green Lantern Corps. She felt as though they wouldn't understand. Victor, who lost his father, encouraged Joe to visit her people anyway, as the things he never got to tell his father before he died torment him every day. Just as Joe pondered this advice, the Watchtower received a distress signal from the Star Labs Doral Deep Space Station. I may be nitpicking here, but when a hologram of Red Tornado's head appeared to give details about the mission, it startled Joe. This makes me think Jennings may not have read Far Sector, the book Joe debuted in, because she had been in deep space amongst a highly advanced civilization called the City Enduring for quite a while before this. This kind of tech should be normal to her, or any Green Lantern for that matter. Anyway, Joe and Victor took a boom tube to the space station, where they found a portion of the crew standing upright, drooling, and unresponsive. They then noticed the rest of the crew floating outside the station in space. As Joe rushed outside to collect them, the once unresponsive crew members inside the station started shouting, "The Master comes!" in an energy blast to the torso blindsided Cyborg. The attacker unveiled himself to be a lame-looking villain named Despero, a character that debuted in Justice League of America #1 in 1960. Despero revealed he planned to lure members of the Justice League to the station so that he could mind control them and destroy the Justice League from the inside out. While Victor battled Despero, Joe was being tortured by illusions. One astronaut transformed into her father and harangued her for leaving him to die. After that, her friends and family surrounded her and shamed her for leaving them without notice and never coming back. As Victor punched Despero through a boom tube, taking the fight into space where Joe was, he made her realize she was under Despero's illusion. Finally, they jumped Despero and the issue ended with Joe asking Cyborg if the Justice League had any souvenirs she could bring to her family. Again, this issue story was cool. The art was fire. Using Despero, an OG GLA villain, was dope. I'll give this story a 7 out of 10. The last story disappointed me. Vita Ayala, who has a great Static Shock series, wrote it, and Ray Anthony Height drew the art. In this story, Duke Thomas, aka Signal, encounters Timothy Jace Fox, aka Batman, or Black Batman if you prefer, as Jace was beating up rednecks in New York. After helping Jace take down the criminals, Duke tries to introduce himself, but Jace crossly rejects Duke for helping him, which he perceives as Duke getting in his way. Duke criticizes Jace's unwillingness to connect with the only other black character whom DC pushed out of the Bat family and treated as a diversity hire because DC is unsure of how to use black characters in Batman books. Duke also says that he's criticized by trolls for not being as good as other Bat family members and labeled as aggressive, despite not being nearly as violent as Jason Todd, who murders people. He thought Jace could connect with him on that. Although I absolutely believe Duke and or Jace would experience racial profiling because we get little exposure to these characters, it feels like Duke's frustration is coming out of nowhere. This means we need these characters in more books to flesh them out. Despite having his own book, it still feels like Black Batman is a blank canvas that DC doesn't want to deal with because he was part of the failed 5G initiative, which I will discuss in a future video. Anyway, at the end of the book, Jace relented and had pizza and drinks with Duke after hearing him explain how Batman, who everyone perceives as a loner, relies on the Bat family. Jace also thought of the hypocrisy of him telling a detective in his I Am Batman book that they have to stick together to fight crime, even though they were at odds. I didn't like this issue because the characterization of Jace was ugly, and I don't know why Duke would be randomly crime fighting in New York. I give this story a 5 out of 10 and this issue a 7 out of 10 in total. Since this book featured black characters we rarely see, I wanted this issue to be more than what it was. It successfully garnered my attention in seeking other books that feature some of them, but I was hoping to see the characters on the cover all interact with each other and start a team. Perhaps we'll see that in the Power Company Recharge #1, another one-shot arriving in April. And hopefully after, we will get a consistent book of a black DC super team full of these amazing characters that deserve more attention and love.